MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. We are back with another team preview heading into the 2023 season. Still don't have a name for it, but I'm just going with team previews heading into the season. Today, or this episode, whatever this is, we're talking Columbus Crew. And of course, I had to bring in my guy Blake Eshelman from MLS Gone Wild. Blake, so happy to have you back on, man.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's been about 2 months since I've been on the microphone. We were joking pre-pod. I had to dust this thing off, man.
Hey.
Is this thing working?
It's nice to hear the voice back. I take in a lot of my my soccer content in general through podcasts, and for a while there I was refreshing MLS Gone Wild, and I'm like, is Blake gonna drop an episode anytime soon? But it's okay. Soon, at least the season will be back around, and I'm sure.
No, we're actually, when we're recording this podcast, I don't know when you're releasing this one, Tom, but we are 31 days away.
Yeah,
exactly 1 month away. It's January 25. We kick off February 25. Man, I'm so excited. Every day we get closer and closer.
It's insane. And I'm okay with telling the listeners and the viewers of this that it's the 25th, because if any moves happen post the 25th for Columbus, it's not going to be talked about. So
you're going to have to bring me back on, because we don't have much to talk about here. Okay.
If Columbus goes out and signs Leo Messi, it's not going to be on this preview. I'm just telling everyone that now. It's not going to be on this preview. But Columbus did have a mixed successful season in 2022, finishing 8th in the Eastern Conference, missing out on the playoffs, unfortunately. But I think towards the end of the season, we're easily one of the better teams, one of the tougher teams to go up against. But obviously, with failed season as far as playoff terms, you have a changeover in head coach. Wilfried Nancy is now taking over as manager of the Columbus Crew, coming over from CF Montreal. And again, out with some players. Artur traded over to Houston. Derek Etienne Jr. leaves as a free agent to Atlanta United. Pedro Santos leaves as free agent to DC. Eric Hurtado, Jaleel Anibaba, Perry Kitchen retires, Marlon Hairston, and the list goes on and on for the players out. The players in, the list is not as equal, but we got some names. Jimmy Medranda coming in as a free agent, Christian Ramirez coming back from Scotland to MLS, and Keegan Hughes coming in as a homegrown addition. Blake, I'm going to start off with just the transactions, how the offseason's gone in your eyes. What has you excited or what has you negative about Nancy in the Crew front office this offseason?
Yeah. Biggest storyline of this offseason for the Columbus Crew, obviously, like we said, Wilfried Nancy.
Yeah.
It's really refreshing to see. Other than Wilfried, the player signings have been underwhelming. We still have, like we said, a month to go until the regular season starts. So Wilfried Nancy obviously has a very identifiable style of play that he likes. Yeah. Although he is tactically flexible, but, hopefully he will start bringing in some players that he likes that will fit this system, because we are lacking in a number of areas. But I do really like the Wilfried Nancy signing. Like I said, he's tactically flexible. He's also proven that he can turn a club around in just 1 year. He took over Thierry Henry in CF Montreal that first year. He added 0.24 points per game in that first season, which, seeing as this is the Crew's first season, if he adds 0.24 to the Crew this year, it would have seen the Crew in third place in the East and hosting a playoff game last year. That would be nice to see. And something that he said in a press conference that the quote I pulled from the Columbus Dispatch was, every pass means something. And if you play soccer, if you watch soccer, if you understand soccer, that's a very refreshing but very simple statement. Mm-hmm. But that kind of reinvigorates me. And the Columbus Crew for years have been known under Caleb Porter for this boring, just, U-shaped passing around the back. It's slow. The ball doesn't move very quickly, and a lot of possessions die in and around the final third. And there's really not a lot of attack generated from it, but every pass means something. And I went back and looked at Montreal stats from last year, and, that quote fits what they did. They were top 5 in goals, goal differential, goals per 90, field tilt, progressive passes, goal chances per 90, and just all the good offensive stats that you want that say every pass means something. They are very intentional about going forward, even though they're very pragmatic with their build-up as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, and kind of just adding to that, right? Like, CF Montreal was just pleasant to the eye. I think sometimes the eye test just purely is something that, as a soccer fan, you can really go based off of. Montreal was a ton of fun to watch. They They passed the ball well. They built up into the attack well. Obviously, they had a lot of key players go over to Europe, and there are a lot of key players to this Columbus Crew roster, this Columbus Crew 11 right now. And there were some listener questions that we got on Twitter, when you threw out that you were coming on the podcast tonight, and a lot of them centered around the same thing. So I'm gonna kind of keep it simple of formation, right? We know Wilfried Nancy really had that 4-3-4-2-1, 3 in the back, whatever, 5 in the back, however you want to consider it, and kind of just built up from there. Is that something that you expect right now Nancy to play? Again, we've mentioned the center back lack of depth. We've mentioned some of those pieces that may hurt the 3-man back, but what do you expect out of Nancy?
Yeah, because the lack of depth at the center back spot, I don't think that we can. Like I said, we still have a month to go. So we may bring in some players. On Twitter, I've been teasing some guys that I would go after. We see Philly go after Lowe and trade within MLS for some for some Garber bucks, like 260,000 or something like that. Mm-hmm. That had me scouring the depth charts looking for players. But as of right now, like, I don't think Josh Williams is a starting caliber, at least not in my mind, good enough for the Columbus Crew. I want to see us take a step forward, not be complacent. And right now it does seem like we're being a little bit complacent, even though we brought in the new head coach. So I actually just jotted down my starting 11 that I thought we would roll out match day 1 if this is how we started. And it was the 4-2-3-1. Basically, I have Will Sands over Jimmy Medranda. Medranda's only played over 1,000 minutes in one of his last 5 seasons. I don't think he's really a guy that you bring in to be a starter. He's kind of been an MLS journeyman. He's a good player. He has good defensive tackling stats, things like that. But Will Sands showed really good promise in like his 600 plus minutes last year. Dagenek next to Mensah, Eloy Room behind him in goal, obviously. And then Steven Moreira outright. Mm-hmm. Aiden Morris, that's his midfield this year alongside Darlington Nagbe. And then out left.
Aiden Morris? Never.
Yeah, right? Right? And then, so we lost Derek Etienne Jr. So, Kevin Molino is finally healthy. So we have to hedge our bets and hope. So I think I think we start him out left. He plays as an inverted winger. He combines with Lucas Ilarion that's going to be playing the 10, Cucho up top. And outright, I mean, do you want Yaya Boa that's going to cut in on the left foot, allowing Moreira to get down that right side down the touchline? Or do you play Luis Diaz, who's kind of the burner that can get in line and, kind of caught fire linking up with Cucho later in the season?
I generally agree with you. I put Medranda over Sands at left back, but again, you follow the team closer. You watch the team closer. You watch some of these young guys closer. So I'll lean with you then on Sands. I'm not going to argue you over a left back, left wing back position. I think preferably I would like to see another center back or two signed, whether that's another homegrown guy, whether that's someone you can bring up from Crew 2, who obviously won MLS Next Pro last year, or maybe some type of inter MLS edition, maybe some guy from Europe, whatever it may be. I would like to see one more pretty high level center back come into this roster, though. And the other thing that I was generally seeing pretty high on the questions on Twitter is the attack, right? There is a lot of questions around the attack. Yes, you have one of the best 10s in the league in Lucas Ilarion. Yes, you have one of the best 9s in the league in Cucho Hernandez. But Kevin Molino, health issues. He's hot boy. Is he cool boy? Where is he at right now? Luis Diaz, he's a very hot and cold player in his own right, more, within the season outside of overall year after year. Yaya Boa, does he take a step up in year 2 in MLS? Is Alexandru Matan, is he back on the team? Technically, I know he is, but what's going on, or where's your brain at right now with the Columbus Crew attack?
So the Christian Ramirez, we'll start there. I actually got this information before Tom Bogert that Christian Ramirez was coming over. I got a DM from a Minnesota fan that's close with Christian Ramirez in his camp, and for whatever reason, I got that info. So I started to get a little bit excited. But I think what Christian Ramirez, I think that does give us a different look. Mm-hmm. He has a different blueprint as a striker. Yeah. What he would provide to us is kind of a big target man who's kind of like a fox in the box, can clean up goals. But as a target man, as a big guy, he's going to occupy the center backs of the opposition, allowing Cucho, and we saw it a lot last year. Cucho likes to drop into the midfield alongside Lucas Ilarion, find the game, play a little bit, and then get into the box. So with Ramirez pushed high, that gives Cucho that space underneath, which is nice. Or Ramirez, if we are down a goal and we're chasing a game, allows us to go a little bit more direct, play balls into the box, and he's that big body in there. So I do like that. As far as the rest of our attack, Matan, I don't know. He went out on loan. He hasn't shown great. I remember he had his opportunity last year in the U.S. Open Cup against Detroit City, and he just, he did not show well, and that's a lesser opponent, and that's kind of the opportunity. It's like, hey, show well here and you'll get minutes. And he didn't do well, went out on loan. Now he's back. He was training away from the team. I'm not exactly sure the capacity in which he's training with the team now. When they brought him in, he looked like a really promising player. But let's go back to kind of the roster build really quick. There's two mechanisms we can use right now. We still have a under 22 initiative spot open. And then also, I wish we would do something like Orlando did, who's going to be on this podcast later, buying down Mauricio Pereira, opening up a DP spot. I wish we would do that with Darlington Nagbe. At 32 years old, is he really a DP in this league? I don't think so. He's a really good player, one of the most sound players on the ball, technically gifted. But is he a DP? I don't think so. We could open up a good DP spot and go to Europe or go to wherever and bring somebody in, that would be nice. And that allows us some roster flexibility, some stuff that I think that Tim Bezbachenko would have been, cooking up by now. But
well, unfortunately, I guess for you guys as of right now, as far as those high name or high price players coming in, you do have your 3 DP spots filled. One of them, yes, being Darlington Nagbe, who, like you said, is still technically, I think, one of the most sound players, if not the most sound player in Major League Soccer. You're still not getting the ball off his feet, and that's what Darlington Nagbe brings you. Pairing next to him, it's your dude, the dude who's been called up to USMNT January camp, who I'm excited to watch in about an hour and 15 minutes, Aiden Morris.
He's starting. Just got the news. He is in the starting 11. I just got a DM. Let's go, baby.
There we go. I'm so happy that I was with you for that news.
I'm so happy I checked my phone when you said that. Hell yeah, man. I'm going to be insufferable on Twitter tonight.
Well, okay. Well, if you guys are on Twitter on January 25th, then make sure, I don't know, you probably saw it. They can't go back in the past. I was going to say, make sure you just maybe mute MLS Gone Wild tonight, but it's okay. It's okay.
That's hype, man. Yeah.
So give me the Aiden Morris hype. Come on. Give it to me. Sell it to me. Give me every piece you want to say about Aiden Morris.
Aiden Morris, he led all midfielders in MLS last year in tackles, maybe tackles per 90, but he was the most efficient tackler for midfielders in all of MLS, which is incredible. He just came back from a torn ACL the season before, came in, was competing with Artur. And if you ask any Crew fan, I think Aiden Morris kind of won that battle all year. Although, our previous head coach, Caleb Porter, loved Artur for whatever reason. Best wishes to Artur down in Houston, by the way. I hope he does really well down there. But Aiden Morris, man, I think he has a really high ceiling. He is one of the next players in line at the 6. Like, I completely expect him to compete and hopefully continue to get called into camp and maybe push for a spot in 2026. I expect him to get a move to Europe maybe after this season. He's a ball hunting center midfielder that's, he seems like he's working on winning the ball and then going forward. He's a high pressing guy, high energy guy, seems like a really good leader, a guy that I would compare to, and some MLS pundits, Joe Lowry included, have compared him to Tyler Adams, the starting 6 for the U.S. men's national team. So I think it says something today that he comes in and he's going to be starting over Kellen Acosta, who was just in Qatar, and he's getting that chance right away.
I mean, look, I think if everything goes right for Aiden Morris, and sorry, that maybe came out wrong. Not everything has to go right, but if Aiden Morris has a very good season, then I think Europe is definitely the next step. I can kind of see him following down like a Mark McKenzie path of like a Belgium or like a Netherlands or something like that, and kind of, maybe honing a starting spot there after some time. I really like him as well. I think he's one of the more talented younger 6s that can affect the game, right? In Major League Soccer, you see the 6 change and affect the game constantly, and I think Aiden Morris has that ability, and I'd like to see him show that ability even more in 2023.
He told me, I will interject here, he told me in my last podcast of 2022 that he wants to shoot more and he wants to score some goals this year. So hopefully Wilfred Nancy can pull some of that out of him, and he has a way of doing that with young players.
Maybe we get a little Ismail Kone-esque Aiden Morris. I don't know.
I don't know if he's as shifty as Kone, but one can only hope,
Blake, the last question that I'll leave you with is the question that I've been kind of finishing all these conversations with. And is there a player, a storyline, something that we haven't talked about, I haven't asked you, whatever it may be, that you feel like if someone's listening to this and they want to know more about Columbus heading into 2023, that you feel like we should mention right now?
Yeah, we'll just take a look back at 2022 really quick, and the team that was the Columbus Crew, and the reason why the Columbus Crew missed the playoffs for the second straight year, missed it by 2 points. The Columbus Crew dropped 11 points in the 90th minute or later and dropped 24 points from winning positions. So part of my hype around Wilfred Nancy coming in is hoping that with a change of coach comes a change of culture, comes a change of mentality, and they can relearn how to finish out games. If you finish out just a couple of those games, you get into the playoffs, and then it's, win and move on. It's a one and done. Anything can happen there. So you just have to get into the playoffs. So I think if Wilfred Nancy comes in, gets us that 0.24 points per game more that he got in Montreal in his first season, and just, reinstill some, fiery mentality in this team. We're playing for 90 plus minutes. We're playing for one another. We're playing for the fans at lower.com field. If they can relearn how to win games and sign some players and make some improvements, I think this Columbus Crew team will be really, really good. And I just gave all the Aiden Morris prop in the world, but guys, really pay attention to Aiden Morris this year. Will Sands as well. I think he's going to take advantage of his opportunity. And also sneaky here, Alan Sonora, who's on the U.S. men's national team. It's come out that he's not going to CF Montreal, and he's looking at MLS teams. He could be a player that if we run the 3-4-2-1 with Cucho up top, we could run Sonora alongside Zelarayan. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
I mean, look, there's options. I like it. If we're gonna go for anything in MLS culture over the last few years, it's forcing your opinion out on social media and into the universe for your club to do it. And there's a good percentage of the time that it works. So I'm not against it. I'm not against it at all. But guys,
one last thing, Tom. So we're not going to sign Sonora. What we're going to do is we always sign some older center midfielder to bring some depth. Yuri Russell was just let go by, was it Sporting Kansas City?
Yeah, SKC.
We'll probably bring him in.
Okay. Hey, not a bad move still. Move.
We do need depth there as well, but I was just looking through. I'm like, it's probably a guy that we'll bring in. But.
All right. Well, make sure you stay up to date with all of the Columbus Crew news and everything, of course, throughout MLS with the MLS Gone Wild podcast. Make sure you follow Blake on on your podcast platforms, on MLS Gone Wild, on social media, all that fun stuff. Blake, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Of course, Tom. Appreciate you, man.
MLS Aces Podcast, we're back with another team preview heading into the 2023 season. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and joining me right now is Jacob Schneider. You guys know Jacob Schneider covering all things Minnesota United, also his work over at MLS Next Pro. Jacob, thank you for coming on, and also a preemptive thank you for answering all my annoying DMs on Twitter.
Thanks for having me. None of them were annoying. We are always talking MLS, always engaging with the community, and, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into Minnesota United. Let's dive into the Loons. And I mean, look, I'm kind of giving listeners and viewers into a little bit of the background of when we're recording, because it matters based off signings and kind of the based off the rest of the conversation. But we're recording February 1st, Apple TV drop day. Yay. Everyone's excited about that. So any signings after February 1st, just we obviously couldn't be able to talk about it. But let's talk about 2022 really quick. Obviously, another playoff spot finish for Minnesota United in 6th place in the Western Conference. Then, that PK shootout with FC Dallas in the first round where you guys got eliminated. Not the, not always the best look, but it is what it is. Still a playoff run. And, a lot of teams can't say that after 2022. But heading into the offseason, it's been a lot of turnover, a lot of outs, also a lot of ins, I have to say. Romain Mettenaire, Jonathan Gonzalez, Ja'Cory Hayes, Tyler Miller, O'Neal Fisher, some of the, I would say some of, maybe the 18 players, depth players coming off this roster, but also bringing back a Joseph Rosales, also bringing back bringing in Adoniel Henry, as Eric Valentin, and a lot of other, I think, talented depth pieces as well, maybe some starters here and there. What's the offseason looked like or been kind of in your point of view?
It's been full of transfer rumors, I can tell you that. But it's also been, a lot of recovery for some of these guys. Bakaida Bassi is coming off what Heath describes as a very an injury that doesn't happen much. It's if you were to hurt that portion of your body, 1 in 20 people would hurt the area that Bakai did, for example. And obviously you'd like to have him on opening day, but he's, instead of weeks away, he's a few months away still. But, he said he's on track, in his injury recovery. And then Hassani Dotson, of course, big name, was with the U20 U24 Olympic side before he got injured last spring. I was at training and I saw when he got injured. I was there. It's one of those moments where you see a player go down, you hear him go down, and all everything just stops. Circle back where 7-8 months later now, he's on track to be ready to play in the season, but he won't be able to join full team training until March 1st. Yeah. So their home opener is March 11th. Ideally, you'd love to be able to get him on the bench for that March 11th game. What Heath described him he is participating in everything possible at the moment besides contact drills. Okay. Once March 1st hits, contact drills, that'll be Dotson. But on top of that, the offseason been linked to 2 Korean internationals in Cho Gae-sung and Hwang Wee-jo. Wee-jo was linked to the Loons last summer. Unfortunately, it looks like that move is not going to work out for Minnesota United, but they do hold his discovery rights. And it sounds like the Chicago Fire are set to sign him as a designated player this week. Speaking with Heath on a conference call yesterday, there could be a deal in the works for those discovery rights. And then Cho Gae-sung, the star of Korea's World Cup campaign, pretty playboy, does his H&M models, lots of model shots out there. He doesn't like to hide that. He's a good looking fella, but talented footballer too. Looks like he will not be joining the Loons this window either. He turned down Minnesota United, Celtic. Celtic is a European powerhouse. They always have been. And then Mainz in Germany. His club, Jean Book, it does not look like they want to let him go in the January window. There could be, a return for him come the summertime. But a $5 million offer was turned down, and the Loons offered more, both salary and transfer fee, than Celtic and Mainz. So they were pushing hard for him. Now they're looking to bring in at least 2 more attackers, 1 a designated player, and we'll wait and see what these final few weeks have until the season begins, because we are T-minus 25 days until opening day, Tom.
I mean, look, we're right around the corner. It's kind of do or die time. Look, personally, I'm an NYCFC fan, so I'm used to players being signed the day before the season starts and us kind of figuring it out. So I'm used to late edition signings. But other MLS teams, other MLS fans out there, you're not used to sometimes maybe later in the offseason additions and kind of getting these guys up to speed. Personally, I would love to get guys signed as soon as possible so you can get a full preseason or as many preseason games in as possible. But look, if you can bring in some talented DP attackers or just talented attackers, period, to kind of help bolster this Minnesota United front line, and you get a nice second half of the season out of them, then I think that's all you could, really ask for if that's what's possible. But let's talk about, I think, the one addition to this team that, you and I have kind of talked about a little bit in the DMs of maybe someone that MLS fans aren't super familiar with. Michael Marquez. I'm going to say I said that incorrectly because I'm not great with names, but talk about this youngster a little bit, because he is coming over with a little bit of a unique profile. I personally think with the Dibassy kind of timeline on his return being, like you said, months away, we could potentially see him in some MLS action. But what's your I guess opinion, and what are you hearing about Marquez?
Well, when you make a signing, everybody's going to want to know who the player is. Yeah. When you make a signing from the Swedish second division, you're a little skeptical at first. But, per Heath, the individual came at the recommendation of a very trusted colleague, scout. We didn't get the word, very trusted partner in Scandinavia. Mm-hmm. And apparently, right when the Loons were circling, as were some of the top clubs in Scandinavia, no names listed, but Heath said, top clubs all around Scandinavia were looking at his name. They were aware of him, and, they're bringing a young kid in. He speaks 6 languages. Like, okay. The one thing he really touched on was that he's a very intelligent individual, and that he is very, very smart on and off the pitch. Yeah. Put your skills aside, having a center back who knows the game very well, who's very aware, who's very knowledgeable of those in-game transitions and such, that's important. So that's, kind of the profile that Marquez brings. He's big, he's got some size to him, and he's very fast. When the Loons announced him, a former teammate of his commented on their Twitter post and said, you guys got a good one. Just a heads up, he's the fastest player I've ever played with as a center back.
I love it.
Typically that's a winger or a center forward, maybe an attacking midfielder, but center back, being that fast, it's, it reminds me of Miles Robinson on paper. Dude's electric with his pace. But along with Marquez, they're bringing in another center back in Miguel Tapias from Liga MX, bringing him in from Pachuca. It's huge. That's a veteran. That's, somebody who's held his own in Liga MX for years. And they got the deal over the line in the summer for sure. But what I can tell you now is that it sounds like he is set to join the team up this week. And Mark Watson was down in Mexico this past weekend, into the early days of this week, trying to get that deal over the line to make sure they get him before the season begins. And, bringing in Tapias is just as big as Marquez because, one, you've got, a middle-aged veteran to come in and, play for years, and then you've got an understudy almost. The Loons lost Callum Montgomery last year. They lost Wyatt Olmsberg the year before. Those are the two young center backs that were in the pool that, were in that third or fourth string depth spot. Now Marquez is coming in, can learn the league, and hopefully, jump out a little quicker than you'd expect.
Yeah, I mean, look, also MLS Next Pro is a thing, and that's going to be giving valuable starting minutes in a professional league to a lot of these youngsters as well, who may not be ready for the full-time jump right away. But bringing in a Tapias, I think, the biggest thing that I can remember about Minnesota United in 2022 is right later on in the season when all these injuries are piling up, the Bossy goes out, and things just seem like they're falling apart. I literally think you guys had one center back active and starting at one point, and Joseph Rosales was playing center back. It was a one odd week during late in the MLS season where I was like, Minnesota's just I feel so bad right now because this is just a struggle. But now you get the Bossy back, hopefully, fully healthy for a second half of the season. You get some other of these guys back and healthy. You bring in a Doniel Henry, a Marquez, a Tapias, and the back line shaping out a little bit more. Now let's kind of, I guess, go to the outside of this back line. The fullback situation. DJ Taylor really blew up onto the scene last year as, I think, a starting caliber right back in Major League Soccer, but you also bring in Alan Benitez. There's also a Zarek Valentin, an MLS veteran, Kamar Lawrence, an MLS veteran. I know Devin Paddleford was signed to a homegrown contract, and then Ryan Jibba was selected in the MLS Super Draft, and he was playing for Union Omaha and USL League One last year. There's a lot of options and a lot of also young talent, I would also say, on this kind of fullback core. What's your make on what we could potentially see, as maybe a starting pair, but there's also going to be a lot of minutes too. So a lot of these guys are going to have to eat up some time.
So Kamar Lawrence, MLS veteran, everybody knows his name around the league now, had not joined the team up until today. In preseason. He had some family issues in Jamaica he was dealing with. And he's set to link up with the team in Orlando today, Tuesday, February 1st. Will not participate in the friendly against Orlando City tomorrow. But Kamar is your number one left back every day. If he's healthy, you're playing Kamar. But Ryan Jibo, a lot of potential. People really liked him in USL League One, and obviously Minnesota knows him well because he beat them in the U.S. Open Cup and was electric on the pitch in that match. And that's one of the only reasons they knew his name is because he made his name known in a match against them in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. So, plots to him. He made his mark. You're going to see Jiba in MLS Next Pro. I would assume to start the campaign. We'll move from there. Zarek Valentine, he's going to be the second string left back, I would assume. But, there could be rotation at right back too. Having fullbacks who can play both sides is helpful. DJ Taylor did burst onto the scene in 2022. I like DJ a lot. I think he's a great guy. One thing you're not going to realize, though, on paper is how small DJ is. I think he's 5'8", 5'7", or 5'8". He's also doesn't have a very big build on him. He is, just your average Joe looking guy, And then there's, these silky smooth step overs, these electric long range shots, and he's got a no fear mentality too. He just got married this offseason too. He's got his own clothing line he works. He's a pretty interesting dude. definitely check out, a little more DJ's life if you're listening and, want to know a little bit more about him because he's one of the more unique player profiles on the team.
Great Instagram follow for sure, too.
Yes, great Instagram follow. Like I said, the clothing he does is it's immaculate. Like it's really cool. But and then there's also the dark horse shout of Hassani Dotson filling in at right back when needed when he becomes healthy. He played there frequently before the Loons brought in Taylor. So keep your eyes on that one. And then Alan Benitez is an interesting one. Very tough initial first 6 months in Minnesota. Became a defensive liability. Ideally, I think he is the perfect wing back in a back five formation because he is more attacking minded. He was just a defensive liability. If he figures out how to adjust to the league, to the game here, to the physicality, bring up some defensive awareness in his game too. I think there's some positive growth there, but I would expect DJ Taylor to get the nod.
Let's jump from the defense to the attack, right? Because I think the attack is where I have some question marks and I want to get your opinion on it. You can talk about what potentially looks to be the starting front line of a Frago Francopane, Luis Amarilla, potentially maybe Mender Garcia at striker. We'll see. And I want to hear your answer on that too. Robin Ludd, and obviously, Bebelo Reynoso, the star, easily you could argue the top player in Major League Soccer in my eyes, right? Like his talent is unbelievable, and commentators, players, everyone says it, that when you watch this guy live, it's just a different story. What do you make of what this attack could potentially be and look like in 2023?
You bring up Reynoso, so that's the first thing I'm going to touch on. Still is not reported for preseason camp. There are some issues ongoing in Argentina. If you'd like to look into them, when you're listening here, welcome to search it up. But he's dealing with a few different things. And once those issues are resolved, he's set to report to training camp. But each week we've gotten an update from the GAF, and it's been, hopefully soon. I spoke with him yesterday, the last day in January. And he mentioned that, ideally they'd like to get Ray into camp early next week. Cannot tell you if that's going to happen or not. And if it does, it's a huge boost for Minnesota. If it does not, it maybe looks like opening day could not feature Emmanuel Reynoso because new preseason camp is huge and players getting in form, getting in shape. Obviously you keep in shape in off season, but there's nothing like training, getting in those scrimmages, those live matches. So, let's look at a hypothetical right now, Tom, to opening day without Emmanuel Reynoso. Cameron Dunbar has really impressed the team since his transfer from the LA Galaxy, playing at the 10, not a striker. So he's been playing beneath a center forward. And I think right now what you're going to be looking at on opening day, if you assume that Emmanuel Reynoso can't go, is going to be left wing Franco Fragapane, Cameron Dunbar at the 10, right wing Bongo Kule-Klangwane, and then striker. It's a toss-up between Garcia and Amarilla, honestly. But I'm going to give my nod to Garcia simply because Amarilla hasn't proved to be a consistent forward for the club. But if they don't run a 10, they could run a 4-3-3 with three midfielders too. So you might see, an Arriaga, Trapp, and Robin Lode midfield with just three forwards and no 10. So Dunbar to the bench. But it's a big season for Bongo Kule-Klangwane, who I adore. I love Bongi. I think everybody does. If you watch European soccer and you see N'Golo Kante pop up on a screen, he just makes you smile. He's got one of those contagious smiles. I've never met somebody who makes me smile like Bongi does when he just walks up to you. Just contagious, absolutely contagious. Lovely individual, South African international, had a good debut campaign in 2022. Keep your eyes on him. I think that could be a big storyline for Minnesota United this year is the Bongi resurgence. But Fragapane has been impressive in preseason. Heath shouted out Mender Garcia. I haven't heard Luis Amarilla's name much yet.
Okay.
Tani Oluwaseyi netted a goal, who former first-round draft pick, who played with twos last season, could be due for some minutes in 2023. And I think I think that's kind of what the attack looks like right now. But do expect some signings to be coming over the line soon.
Well, I'm excited about Bongi. He was one guy who, like I've been asking the question of who's one guy you really feel like could jump onto the scene. I got that answer there, and I absolutely love also the smiling factor of him too, because these are people too, and it's awesome that they're making impressions and interacting as people with other people and making people smile. That's what I think we should all kind of really aim for in this world. And I'm also excited to hear about Cameron Dunbar, one of the I think maybe underrated, no one's talking about kind of moves. Cameron Dunbar was really good for the LA Galaxy too, and never just really feel like he had an opportunity to break out into the Galaxy first team. And if he can take an opportunity to break out in Minnesota United, good for the kid, because he's a really big talent. Let's finish things up, Jacob. One final question. And, like I said, it's February 1st. The preseason is going on. How has Minnesota United been looking so far? And I know you said that they have a friendly tomorrow against Orlando. The friendly is February 2nd, just again for people listening and watching. What are you expecting to really see or kind of take away from that match heading into the season?
I'll backtrack just a little bit. They've had two preseason matches already. Mm-hmm. Last weekend, their starters went, I believe it was 60 minutes against the Philadelphia Union starters. Okay. And per Adrian Heath, he said, his team was on the front foot all match, and that they were tied 1-1 before teams transitioned to their second strings, and the game ended 2-2 with the Union netting late to equalize.
Got it.
He's been really impressed with his squad so far. Ruben netted the goal with the first team last week against the Union. He cut in from the right side. It was a curling effort from what I'm told. Obviously preseason, no video. They're not even going to post a goal on social. So, this is secondhand. But, looking ahead to Orlando City, I think the team least spoken about this offseason has been Orlando City, when arguably they should be the most talked about. They've had, in my opinion, the best offseason. They've had the best offseason of any MLS club. And, if you are a betting man, MLS Cup dark horse. I'm immediately telling you right now because of the talent on that team, But I think, it's a big opportunity for this team to go up against a very talented side now. They've added a lot. Orlando City also have to kind of gain that cohesion as a unit. They have to gain the chemistry on the pitch, and it presents a great opportunity for them. What I would like to see from Minnesota tomorrow, and obviously no preseason streams or anything, but anything I hear secondhand, I'll put out on Twitter. But what I would like to see is, I want to see, Bongi get minutes up top. I'd like to see Garcia and Bongi play together, because they're very fast individuals, very pacey, very tall. And I think they've got very similar body types in the way they kind of maneuver through the game. So whether that's a two-striker formation, whether it's Bongi as a right wing, I'm intrigued. But Robin Lod has kind of been a utility man. You could see him at center mid. You could see him at right wing. Yep. You don't know. And I do think, getting minutes for Doniel Henry would be big. From what I gather, I don't think he played in the game against the Union. Mm-hmm. And I know Brent Coleman right now is dealing with some tendonitis, so he will not be playing against Orlando City, the second string backup to Bakaida Bassi. So I would hope that center back position would go to Henry in this game. But I do know that Kervin Arriaga, Honduran international, did fill in at center back in that match against the Union alongside Michael Boxall. So, Arriaga's versatility is expressed there. He could also play defensively. He could play as that six or the center back. Keep your eyes peeled for opening day too. If Coleman's tendonitis, lingers over a bit this preseason, he's not fit for opening day. You could see him fill in at center back if Tapias and Marquez, aren't kind of ready and integrated into the team yet. There's some options there, but big opportunity for the Loons this offseason, to add some more talent still. They need it. They need the attacking talent, especially in that center forward position. Hopefully it's a flashy signing. Hopefully, it's something fun. I do know, I saw that Atlanta United are adding Georgios Giamakis.
I wasn't even going to go for it, so that's
I butchered that from Celtic, and he's a really fun signing. Like,
he's a good player.
Every time I've watched Celtic play, because I try and watch Cameron Carter-Vickers. Every time I watch Celtic play, this guy is he's big. He's kind of got a big presence on the field. He bodies people. I want something flashy like that in Minnesota. Give us something fun to watch. So hopefully we get that over the line soon. And T-minus 25 days until opening day, Tom.
I mean, that's it, right? And to stay up to date with everything Minnesota United, you have to go follow Jacob Schneider on Twitter. Jacob, do you want to plug anything, drop anything, go for it? This is your time to shine.
Yeah, so here locally in Minnesota, we have a site called Sota, soccer, Sota, Soccer, and it is me and a bunch of local contributors, bringing you top Minnesota soccer content, whether it's Minnesota Aurora, whether it's Minnesota United, NPSL, Minneapolis City, some local college stuff. The MLS media scene took a massive hit last week with the SB Nation layoffs, and I wouldn't be where I am without SB Nation. I crafted my trade there for 3 years.
Yeah.
Minnesota United let two 18-year-old kids come into training sessions and go to matches, and me and colleague Eli Hoff basically helped build the SB Nation blog here in Minnesota, and seeing that it's no longer going to be a thing. It sucks. But both Eli and I, now contribute to Sota Soccer. We've got some great sponsors. We've got a Patreon system if you're interested. But on top of that, we bring you a daily newsletter, daily content for the most part here and there. Very fun podcast. And we might be working on a few things regarding some away matches this year with content we'll be doing on social media. But, check us out. Feel free to support if you'd like. And always drop a follow @ Jacob Schneider on Twitter. There'll be MLS Next Pro content coming, late March-ish. MLS content every day. Chelsea blurbs. That's about it. Okay. Quick shout out to Enzo Fernandez. Yeah, I think that's about it, Tom.
I love it. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for coming on, talking Minnesota with me. Go follow Sota Soccer. Go support Jacob and go support all the work he's doing and everyone else over there. Support independent soccer coverage as well. We've had a few other people on doing these team previews who were affected by the SB Nation kind of just, I don't even know the right word, layoff, cancellation of coverage, whatever it may be. But support them, because a lot of them, just like Jacob, are going out and doing their own independent thing with others, and it's awesome to see. So support them and keep supporting that. And Jacob, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'm excited, and like I said, T-minus 25 days.
MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we're back with another team preview heading into the 2023 season. We are talking Chicago Fire, and what an offseason it's been for them. But joining with me, talking Fire, is Ruben Tisch, host of the Hotcast. Ruben, how are you? Thank you for coming on.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
I mean, let's talk Fire, because they've had some crazy moves this offseason. Obviously, 2022, another down year in Fire history, and I have a lot of friends who are Fire fans, and they're just kind of used to it at this point. 12th place in the Eastern Conference, missing out on the playoffs. But this offseason, we did see the sale of Gaga Slonina to Chelsea. We did see the sale of Jan Duran to Aston Villa. Is the Fire just the EPL feeder at this point? I mean, come on.
Honestly, from a business perspective, there's a lot worse places to be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, one of the longtime criticisms of MLS, if you've been around for as long as, we have, is, it's a retirement league. People come in, to the league because they're either not good enough to play in Europe anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
But excuse me, but now we're starting to see teams send over younger prospects, and we're starting to see, talented players from South America like Duran or American kids in the youth academies. You play well in MLS, you'll get to a top 5 league.
Yeah.
And I think that, that is something that I think is a positive for the league and for the Fire. It's one of the very few positives that our academy can churn out prospects, especially recently.
Yeah.
That can churn out prospects that have a future at top teams in Europe. So I think that's positive.
You guys you're right on that point, right? And I want to kind of stick with maybe the homegrowns on the roster and the young players on the roster, because you guys do have a ton. You had a ton play a lot of minutes last year, and I would expect more time, more minutes this year, right? You have an Alex Monis, you have a Chris Brady, who from what I'm seeing from the outside looking in, is he's presumed to be the next starter behind Gaga. You have a Javier Casas, you have a Victor Bereza, you have a lot of guys who potentially, with more competitions and more minutes in 2023, could eat up a lot of minutes. What's your kind of outlook on the youth and the homegrowns currently on this roster?
So let's start with Chris Brady, because he seems like the obvious place to start, right? Because he was, when you're two, top goalkeepers on the roster, your starter and your first backup are 18-year-old academy products from the same academy class.
Yeah.
is kind of amazing and unprecedented. And there's talk in the technical staff and the academy staff that's sort of, I don't want to say leaked out, because that implies, but it's kind of, in the aura around the team, that Chris Brady, at the end of the day, will end up being as good or better than Gaga. And you saw, Friday during the U.S. men's national team game, that amazing save that Gaga had, where he had to reach behind him on the ground and tap it aside. His shot stopping ability. Chris Brady was right there with him with that sort of stuff. So the drop off, it's going to be a drop off, because, as we all know, development is non-linear. So, Gaga also had half the 2021 season, to get situated for this next season, and Brady's coming in essentially cold. They've brought in a couple other goalkeepers in the offseason, a couple more experienced guys. But for now, Brady's the apparent starter unless something happens.
And I guess, just to jump back quick into the rest of the homegrowns, is there any one other homegrown, or again, even the youth product, that you feel like maybe by the end of the season, where maybe not talking about on a Gaga or Chris Brady level, but we're talking about as maybe a solidified starter, someone who's played a ton for the Fire and has looked good?
Brian Gutierrez. Frankly, I was surprised he was left off the men's national team roster this time around. There's, dozens of highlights already.
Yeah.
And, he was a spot starter last year, when guys get hurt, and he can play in the middle or on the wing, even though I think he's better off on the number 10 role, but I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to Sheridan Shaqiri in a couple of minutes. But yeah, his instinctual ability to make the pass is unbelievable. I think that also, depending on what the striker situation looks like, Victor Becerra, who is now the backup striker to Kasper Shabilko, is someone I'd look out for to maybe, have a 5-goal season, which, for a academy product who's been on the roster for 2-3 years is, finally getting first team minutes. Because one of the thing about all of the names from the academy that the Fire signed is they all signed, pretty young. We're talking, 16, 17. So I'm not really expecting a lot from them this season in my head, since they've been signed. Alex Moniz, Sergio Argel, Misael Rodriguez. The target number year was 2024.
Okay.
So like next season, I'm expecting a lot of these homegrowns to make a jump to regular first team football. But this year it's more of the guys who were there last year. Your Brady's and Gutierrez's.
Okay. I mean, totally fair, right? That makes sense. And, the Fire do sign their academy players very young. I mean, Gaga was 14 years old. So,
he was 15. I want to say, when they signed him. I think it was if it wasn't 15, it was like right around his 15th birthday.
Got it. Okay. So. Still, either which way, very young, doing bigger things than I was doing at 15. But
yeah.
You mentioned Shaqiri. Let's stick in the midfield. Obviously, Xherdan Shaqiri being a guy who came in last season, I think with a lot of fans had a lot of expectations of him being that guy coming over from Europe, right? He's played everywhere. He's won everything. And I think personally watching Shaqiri, I think he did a lot. I don't think he was a bad player. I think sometimes numbers don't replicate what he put out on the field. And I think on the field, for the most part, with the team around him that lacked in some areas, he did what he could. You would like to, of course, see him play better. But what's your take on Shaqiri and maybe kind of rounding out the rest of this midfield?
I actually think his numbers were better than he played last year.
Ooh, okay.
There were a lot of times where he shut off mentally.
Okay, I can agree with that.
I think that one of the things, like, his numbers were pretty good, 8 goals, 6 or 7 assists or something like that. But I think that he wasn't there a lot of the time. He was too busy worrying, about the World Cup in the winter, and obviously his performance at the World Cup sort of showed, I guess, that he, objectively made the right call there. He was involved in every single goal that Switzerland scored, right? I think a lot of it was, and I want to be clear here, a lot of Fire fans were frustrated with last year.
Yeah.
And the performance. My frustrations are different in that I think the team massively underperformed. If you look at the roster last year, and even to an extent this year, this is a playoff team on paper.
Yeah.
And I think that the underperforming nature of it had a lot to do with, Shaqiri just not being comfortable or not playing. Like, there's a moment that sticks out in my head where the Fire are winning a game. And it's late in the first half, and he just sort of shuts off defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget against who, but his mark runs down the field uncontested, gets a pullback pass and scores. Where if Shaqiri's doing his job and not even, making the run, like, you're an attacking player. You don't have to make that run with that guy, but at least communicate that the run is happening. Because because all the players were concentrating on, their marks or whatever, not exactly looking for a deep run from midfield.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't even yell out that the run's coming. It's little stuff like that was happening throughout the year, and also his excessive jaw-jacking at the referees and, like, not playing the game and talking to the referee while the play is going on, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That really didn't endear him to the fan base. I hate to use the blue collar cliche in Chicago, but there is some truth in, like, there's been worse teams that have been liked more than last year's team because of the work ethic and then the never quit nature of the squad. Whereas this past season, especially from the big players, Gaston Jimenez and Xherdan Shaqiri, where it wasn't like that. And that, I think, was more frustrating than the place in the table. Because there was a point in time, sorry to interrupt you again, but there was a point in time where the Fire were in third place for, I think, 2 days or whatever, because, games on they get the third place on a Saturday, results on a Sunday, they shuffle back down to like 5th or 6th. But there was a point in time where this team was playing at a high level.
And I don't think last year's team was that, to be honest, that like awful defensively. I think injuries also caught up with them at a certain point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rafael Schijas being out for a long time, Wyatt Omsberg being out for a long time. Like there was a lot of injuries that also stacked up on this team. And I can understand the point you're saying about Shaqiri. And it's not even like his offensive output was so great that you could, overcompensate for maybe the lack of defense or the lack of whatever else he's going to bring to that.
If he was scoring 15 or 20 goals, fine.
Yeah, no one's gonna care, right? no one's gonna care at that point. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about that attack, right? Because it's a new look attack. Jean Duran no longer there as well. So you're looking at Kasper Shabilko to be most likely, your starting striker. A few homegrowns behind him. You have Chris Mueller on one wing, Jairo Torres on another wing. What's your take on what this attack could potentially be in 2023?
I think it all depends on whether or not Ezra Hendrickson grows a big enough pair to not play Shaqiri in the middle and play Torres or Gutierrez in the middle. Because, you saw in the World Cup, Shaqiri started out on the right the entire time and had, like we said, a huge impact on the way Switzerland play and the way, they did things. And he was highly effective out on the wing. You've got two players in Torres and Gutierrez who I think fit the definition of what you need from, a classic Western Hemisphere number 10. Mm-hmm. Mexican or South American number 10. They've got flair on the ball. They've got vision. Gutierrez sometimes has trouble finishing, but I know Jairo Torres, when he was healthy in Liga MX, didn't really have trouble finishing. So they've got that going for them. Chris Mueller is on the left is good. I wouldn't change a thing about him. He's much more of an inverted winger than a wide player.
Yeah.
But he's smart and his runs are good. And he's fast enough where he can beat a fullback and a center back through a channel and get on a ball and put it in the back of the net. I think if they can get everybody on the same page and play everybody where they need to play, the goals should come. I'm not as worried about Kasper Shabilko. Yes, him playing up top alone isn't the most ideal.
Yeah.
If you think about his time in Philadelphia, he was always better when he had a strike partner up top and they were playing in that Diamond 4-4-2 that Jim Curtin loves and I love. But I think that having players cut on the inside and creating space for him and him also being healthy again, because he had a back injury and a leg injury and also had another new baby with his toddler that he already has. So there's not much rest going on in the Shabilko household. So that plus his injuries, he fell off. Yeah. I still have some faith that Kasper Shabilko can be a quality MLS level striker. And I think he can do it with this team. The front four, in midfield, Guti, Torres, Mueller, and Shaqiri should have enough firepower here to unlock Shabilko.
I think they should also have enough ability to create for them, make the right runs, to give Shabilko that space, whatever it may be. I do agree with you. I think a healthy Kasper Shabilko is, maybe he's not an elite level striker in Major League Soccer, but I think he's a guy who can score you 10 to 12 goals from the front of the line. Ruben, finish things off here. Is there, and this is a question that I've been kind of finishing up all my conversations with for these previews, is there a player, a storyline, something that you're looking for, or something that if you didn't know anything about the Fire and you wanted to learn a little bit something about them heading into 2023, you feel like we should say or talk about a little bit now?
I would look at their double pivot, because that's the straw that stirs the drink in Ezra's, tactics. A lot like how the U.S. men's national team play with, McKinney and Adams in their double pivot during the World Cup. Federico Navarro, and who is ever playing alongside Federico Navarro, either Gaston Jimenez if he's healthy, or Mauricio Pineda is another homegrown name that we didn't really talk about, but he's, I think if Luca De La Torre isn't, if he doesn't improve or whatever, I think as of right now, Mauricio Pineda could be in the conversation for at least some sort of national team call up behind Tyler Adams. He plays that position really well. But yeah, it's those three players for those two spots. That's where, if you're watching a Chicago Fire game, those two players are the most important players on the pitch, because if they're, disrupting the other team and getting balls going forward, or if there's space for them to push up, if they're going well, things are going to look good for the Fire.
Yeah, I mean, they control the game, right? They help out the defense immensely. They help out the rest of the attack kind of getting into their flow immensely. And I think the Fire are one of these teams that they do have a very high ceiling in 2023. But if things do fall off and we see the mistakes and we see the mental lapses and we see the injuries we saw from 2022, could be a low floor again in Chicago. But Ruben, we're going to be following along with you and the Hotcast and making sure we know everything about the Fire all 2023 season long. Thank you so much for coming on and talking Chicago Fire with me.
Thank you for having me.